The 2 a.m. trap starts when both nervous systems are tired enough to stop pretending. During the day, the avoidant person can stay busy enough to outrun loneliness, and the anxious person can stay busy enough to outrun abandonment fear. Work, errands, scrolling, noise, other people, routine, pride, distraction, all of it gives the body somewhere to hide. But then, night comes. The room gets quiet. The phone is close. The day stops giving both people places to escape. The avoidant person starts feeling the emptiness they were able to avoid all day. The anxious person starts feeling the silence they were able to outrun all day. One body says, "I want comfort without pressure." The other body says, "I need proof I have not been forgotten." And that is where the 2 a.m. trap begins. It does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it is one text, one story view, one reaction, one call, one memory. One sentence that sounds casual but lands directly on the wound. For the avoidant person, it can feel like relief from loneliness. For the anxious person, it can feel like relief from abandonment. For a few minutes, maybe even a few hours, both bodies calm down. The bond feels alive again. The distance feels less final. The silence feels broken. The fear gets quiet. And because both people feel something, the moment can feel like progress. But if nothing is named, nothing is repaired, nothing is made clearer, and nothing changes in daylight, that moment did not free the relationship. It rehooked it. That is the brutal truth of the 2 a.m. trap. The problem is not always that the moment is fake. The problem is that the moment feels real enough to make both people forget the pattern. If this kind of clarity helps your nervous system settle, subscribe. PsychBond is a daily decoder for psychology, relationships, and avoidant and anxious attachment patterns, so you stop guessing. Now, let us break the loop down cleanly. This is a control loop, not just a romantic moment. A control loop is a pattern that keeps returning because each part of the pattern temporarily regulates the next part. It does not solve the relationship. It only keeps the system running. In the 2 a.m. trap, the first stage is activation. Night activates both sides in different ways. The avoidant person may not feel the same pressure at night that they feel in the day. Nobody is asking for a full conversation. Nobody is sitting across from them with hurt in their eyes. Nobody is asking, "What are we doing? What changed? Why did you pull away?" The night gives them emotional distance and emotional access at the same time. They can reach without fully showing up. They can feel close without being fully seen. They can let loneliness speak without letting responsibility enter the room. That is why the avoidant side may become softer at night. Their defenses are lower. Their pride is quieter. Their need for comfort gets louder. They may remember your warmth. They may miss the feeling of being understood. They may wonder whether the door is still open. They may want to feel the bond without facing the damage inside the bond. So they reach. Not always because they are choosing. Sometimes because loneliness got louder than avoidance for a moment. That distinction matters. The anxious person is activated in the opposite direction. Night does not make them want distance. Night makes distance feel like danger. During the day, they can tell themselves they are fine, but at night, the silence becomes evidence. The phone stays quiet, and the body starts filling in the blank. Maybe they are done. Maybe they forgot me. Maybe they are with someone else. Maybe I said too much. Maybe I ruined it. Maybe they're pulling away again. The anxious nervous system is not only waiting for a message, it is waiting for proof that the connection still exists. It is waiting for proof that the person did not disappear internally. It is waiting for proof that the bond survived another day. So, when the avoidant reaches at night, the anxious body does not receive it as one small signal. It receives it as oxygen. It receives it as rescue. It receives it as, maybe the fear was wrong. That is how the collision happens. Avoidant loneliness meets anxious panic. One person reaches to quiet emptiness. The other responds to quiet abandonment fear. Both feel relief. Neither person gets safety. This is why the 2 a.m. trap is so powerful. It gives both nervous systems exactly enough relief to stay in the loop, but not enough truth to heal the loop. The avoidant person feels less alone because access has been restored. The anxious person feels less abandoned because contact has returned. But the relationship has not necessarily become safer. The old wound has not been repaired. The hard conversation has not happened. The pattern has not been named. The next time plan has not been built. The body just received a hit of relief and called it meaning. This is the second stage of the loop, the reach. The reach can come from either side. Sometimes the avoidant sends the message. Sometimes the anxious person checks, replies, reacts, or opens the door the moment a small signal appears. Sometimes nobody texts, but both people are still mentally reaching. The avoidant checks your page to see if you are still there. The anxious person checks theirs to see if they are still alive in your world. Both people pretend they are observing, but the nervous system is not observing. It is looking for regulation. It is looking for a signal that the bond still has access. This is why a story view can feel like contact. This is why a late reaction can feel like a conversation. This is why one message can erase an entire day of trying to move on. The nervous system does not need a full relationship to get rehooked. It only needs a signal strong enough to reopen the emotional question. Are we done? Do they care? Did they miss me? Am I still important? Is there still something here? That question is the hook. Once the question reopens, the mind returns to analysis. And analysis can feel like connection when the heart is hungry. You start replaying tone, timing, punctuation, speed, silence, meaning. They start feeling less alone because they can still touch the bond. Both people are back inside the system. This is where relief becomes dangerous. Relief feels good. Relief feels convincing. Relief feels like the body finally got what it needed. But relief is not the same as repair. Relief says, the pain stopped for a moment. Repair says, the pattern changed. Relief says, they reached out. Repair says, they can talk about why they disappeared. Relief says, I feel close again. Repair says, we know what to do differently next time. Relief says, the bond is alive. Repair says, the bond is becoming safer. The 2 a.m. trap rehooks you because relief arrives before truth. Your body calms down before your mind checks whether anything actually changed. The avoidant feels the relief of being connected without the burden of accountability. The anxious person feels the relief of being remembered without the proof of consistency. Both bodies can mistake that calm for progress. But calm after panic is not always safety. Sometimes it is only the nervous system dropping out of emergency mode because the old access returned. This is the third stage. False calm. False calm is one of the most addictive parts of anxious and avoidant dynamics. It feels like the relationship has healed because the tension has dropped. The avoidant may feel softer. The anxious person may feel reassured. The tone may become warm. The conversation may feel familiar. There may be jokes, memories, tenderness, desire, maybe even vulnerability. And for a moment, both people can believe the same fantasy. Maybe we are okay now. But false calm is not the same as change. False calm is what happens when the emotional temperature lowers, but the structure stays the same. The avoidant is no longer feeling lonely, so they relax. The anxious person is no longer feeling abandoned, so they relax. But the reason the cycle happened has not been addressed. Nobody has asked, why did distance become the only way to breathe? Nobody has asked, why did silence feel like rejection? Nobody has asked, what are we actually doing with this bond? Nobody has asked, what happens tomorrow when closeness feels real again? Without those questions, the night becomes a temporary shelter, not a turning point. This is why the morning crash hurts so much. In the morning, daylight brings back consequence. The avoidant person may wake up and feel the weight of what they opened. They may think, what did I just start? Did I give the wrong idea? Are they going to want to talk now? Did I create expectation? Did I lose control? Did I make the bond too real again? Their body may move from loneliness into pressure. And when pressure returns, avoidance returns. The anxious person wakes up with the opposite system. They may think, last night felt real. Why are they quiet now? Did I imagine it? Did I say too much? Did they regret it? Why did they open the door if they were going to close it again? The night gave hope. The morning gives confusion. The avoidant retreats to recover control. The anxious person spirals to recover connection. That is the daylight reset. The loop returns to its original positions. One person distances, one person wonders. One person feels trapped by what the night implied. The other feels abandoned by what the morning refused to prove. And because the night did not become repair, both people are left with emotional residue. The avoidant may feel shame, pressure, or the need to minimize. The anxious person may feel exposed, foolish, desperate, or reattached. The bond is not clearer. It is more loaded. This is why a 2 a.m. moment can make the next day worse. It did not create a new path. It intensified the old one. It gave the anxious side something new to analyze and gave the avoidant side something new to avoid. That is the control loop. Activation, reach, relief, false calm, daylight reset, rehook. Activation, reach, relief, false calm, daylight reset, rehook. It keeps going because each stage solves the discomfort of the stage before it. The avoidant feels lonely, so they reach. The anxious person feels abandoned, so they respond or soften. The avoidant feels soothed, so the urgency drops. The anxious person feels hopeful, so standards soften. The morning creates pressure, so the avoidant pulls back. The pullback creates fear, so the anxious person waits for the next signal. Then night comes again, and the cycle has another chance to breathe. There is one more reason this loop becomes so hard to break. The night makes the bond feel private, almost separate from real life. It can feel like a hidden room where both people are softer, more honest, more available, and less defended. That private feeling can make the connection seem deeper than it actually functions. You may think, this is the real us. This is who we are when the world is not interfering. But a relationship cannot only be real in the hidden room. It has to be real when there are choices to make, discomfort to face, and consequences to carry. The 2 a.m. version may show you what both people feel when defenses drop, but the daylight version shows you what both people can actually hold. That distinction matters. Feeling is not the same as capacity. Missing is not the same as repair. A soft hour is not the same as a stable pattern. And if the bond only becomes tender when everything is quiet and no one has to answer for anything, then the tenderness is not enough to trust. This is why the 2 a.m. trap is not just about texting. It is about timing, vulnerability, and unfinished pain. Night makes both people more vulnerable, but vulnerability without structure becomes reattachment, not repair. The avoidant may reveal a soft feeling. The anxious person may reveal hope. Both can be real. But if those real feelings do not become a real conversation, the bond stays stuck in emotional flashes. And this is why the cycle can feel romantic when it is actually unstable. It creates the feeling of being chosen without the structure of being chosen. It gives the anxious side a reason to hope, and the avoidant side a way to feel connected without surrendering control. Both people leave the night with a story. The anxious story is, maybe this means they still want me. The avoidant story is, maybe I can still touch the connection without losing myself. Both stories soothe pain, but neither story repairs the pattern. This is where people get confused. They think, if the moment was real, then the relationship must be moving somewhere. Not always. A moment can be real and still not be strong enough to become change. A text can be honest and still not be responsible. A call can feel intimate and still not build trust. A vulnerable sentence can be true and still not become commitment. The trap is not that nothing real happens at night. The trap is that something real happens in a container too small to hold the truth after the night ends. That is why the cycle keeps rehooking you. You are not only hooked by fantasy, you are hooked by real fragments that never become a whole pattern. Real longing, real relief, real tenderness, real fear, real chemistry, real memory. But the relationship needs more than real fragments. It needs structure that can survive daylight. If the only place the bond feels alive is in late-night softness, the bond is not stable. It is activated. If the only time someone reaches is when loneliness is loud, the relationship is not being chosen. It is being used as regulation. If the only time you feel safe is when they finally respond, your body is not in trust. It is in withdrawal and relief. This is the part where you have to be brutally honest. The 2 a.m. version of the bond might not be a lie, but it might also not be enough. It may be the avoidant person's loneliness speaking before their defenses return. It may be the anxious person's fear settling before the old questions return. It may be two nervous systems taking shelter in each other without having the capacity to build a home. And shelter can feel beautiful when you have been outside in the cold. But shelter is not the same as a relationship that can hold you. A cycle can feel like love when it repeatedly rescues you from the pain it keeps creating. That is one of the hardest truths. The same system that hurts you can become the system you run to for relief. The silence hurts, so the text feels like medicine. The distance hurts, so the return feels like love. The uncertainty hurts, so the soft moment feels like proof. But if the same relationship keeps injuring the nervous system and then temporarily soothing the injury, you may not be experiencing repair. You may be experiencing dependency on relief. That does not mean the feelings are fake. It means the system is not safe enough. In a healthy bond, relief is not the main event. Trust is. You do not need a dramatic nighttime opening to believe the bond exists. You do not need one message to rescue the whole day. You do not need to wait for the person to become soft at their most tired hour before you can feel close. You do not need the night to do the emotional work the relationship refuses to do in daylight. Healthy connection can have late-night tenderness, but it does not rely on late-night tenderness as the only proof of care. That is the difference. The 2 a.m. trap uses tenderness as a substitute for clarity. A healthy bond uses tenderness as part of clarity. The 2 a.m. trap gives you emotion without direction. A healthy bond gives emotion that can become action. The 2 a.m. trap says, "Feel this moment." A healthy bond says, "Let this moment lead to something safer." So, how do you exit the control loop? You stop measuring the relationship by the intensity of the nighttime moment and start measuring it by the behavior after the moment passes. You ask, what did this change? Did the conversation become clearer? Did the avoidant person become more accountable? Did the anxious person become more grounded? Did both people name the pattern? Did anyone say what happens differently next time? Did the morning bring repair, or did it bring the same old distance? That is the test. If the night gives relief, but the morning brings the same confusion, the cycle is still running. If the text creates hope, but no clarity, the cycle is still running. If the call feels intimate, but nobody can talk about the pattern in daylight, the cycle is still running. If the apology happens at night, but the behavior does not change, the cycle is still running. If the reconnection happens when both people are lonely, but disappears when both people need responsibility, the cycle is still running. The exit begins when you stop asking, "Did it feel real?" and start asking, "Did it become repair? Did it become consistency? Did it become a conversation both people could stay inside? Did it become a different response the next time the trigger appeared?" That is how you separate rehooking from change. Rehooking makes you feel connected again. Change makes the relationship safer. Rehooking lowers panic. Change builds trust. Rehooking says, "We are not done." Change says, "We are doing this differently." Rehooking gives the body a hit. Change gives the body a pattern. You need the pattern, not the hit. The hit is what keeps the cycle addictive. The pattern is what makes love livable. This is also where both sides have to tell the truth. For the avoidant side, the truth may be, "I reach when I am lonely, but I disappear when the reach creates responsibility. I want comfort, but I fear what comfort asks from me. I like the warmth, but I avoid the repair. I want to know the door is open, but I do not always want to walk through it." That truth is not comfortable, but it is necessary. For the anxious side, the truth may be, "I respond to small openings like they are proof because silence feels unbearable. I call relief peace because my body has been starving. I soften my standards when the bond feels alive again. I let one warm moment erase the pattern because I am afraid that if I see the pattern clearly, I will have to grieve. That truth is also painful. But without truth, the loop wins. The loop does not require healing. It only requires repetition. It only needs one lonely reach, one hopeful response, one soft moment, one morning crash, and one more chance to believe the next night will be different. To break it, somebody has to stop confusing the cycle breathing again with the relationship healing. Somebody has to say, "This felt meaningful, but what are we doing with it?" Somebody has to say, "I do not want to keep meeting only when we are lonely." Somebody has to say, "If we open this door, we need to talk about what happens after." Somebody has to say, "I cannot keep letting nighttime emotion replace daylight consistency." That is not cold. That is clarity. Clarity is what the cycle avoids, because clarity forces the moment to become something or stop pretending. The 2 a.m. trap survives in ambiguity. It survives in almost. It survives in maybe. It survives in the space where both people feel something, but no one has to define what that feeling requires. But real connection cannot live only in maybe. It needs language. It needs repair. It needs boundaries. It needs follow-through. It needs the ability to say, "Last night felt close, but what does closeness mean in real life?" It needs the ability to say, "I care." And caring means I will not keep reopening this bond without taking responsibility for the impact. It needs the ability to say, "I miss you." But missing you is not enough if I cannot show up. It needs the ability to say, "I want reassurance, but I will not turn every silence into proof before I look at the pattern." That is the kind of truth that breaks the loop. Not because it guarantees the relationship will survive, because it stops the relationship from surviving only through confusion. The final filter is simple. If the night creates contact, but the day avoids clarity, that is not repair. If the night creates emotion, but the day avoids responsibility, that is not change. If the night gives relief, but the day brings the same pattern, that is rehooking. And once you can name it, you do not have to hate the person. You do not have to deny that the moment felt real. You do not have to pretend you did not feel the pull. You only have to stop calling the pull proof. You have to stop calling relief safety. You have to stop calling a reopened wound a reopened relationship. The 2 a.m. trap is powerful because it happens when both people are vulnerable enough to feel, but not always capable enough to repair. The avoidant reaches to quiet loneliness. The anxious person responds to quiet abandonment panic. Both feel relief. Neither gets safety. And then, the morning asks the question the night avoided. Can this bond actually change in real life? If the answer is no, then the night did not bring you back to love. It brought you back to the loop. You deserve more than a bond that only feels alive when both nervous systems are tired, lonely, scared, or missing each other. You deserve connection that can survive daylight. You deserve tenderness that becomes clarity. You deserve emotion that becomes responsibility. You deserve repair that does not disappear when the mood changes. And you deserve to stop being rehooked by moments that feel like everything while changing nothing. If this helped your body feel a little safer, Liking this video helps it reach someone else who needs this clarity. Welcome to PsychBond. You're safe here.